Welcome to the Mom as Well podcast, where we are digging deep into the gifts and the gaps of foster and adoptive parenting. I'm Tara Hutton. I'm glad you're here. Mama's Well. Yes, she is. Today, here we are on Zoom again, and it's getting kind of fun. You don't even know. I could have my pajama pants on right now. Nobody will know, right? But I'm really excited to introduce my guest today. I found her through a parenting online conference that I attended. I went back to try to figure out where I discovered this wonderful woman. But I think that was where. And last year, maybe some part of COVID. And her name is Leslie Potter. She is a parenting coach. She is also an adoptive mom. And that's always really near and dear to my heart, and I know your heart. And she's also the founder of Pure Joy Parenting. And I have been binging some of her podcasts for the last week, or at least the last few days, just really trying to get to know her more intimately. And I am moved. The podcast is called Parenting Pause, and I'll let her tell you more about that. But before I go on any further, I'm going to let her introduce herself. So welcome, Leslie.
Hello, Tara. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here as well.
Yeah.
Would you just kind of kick us off, because
Sure.
many may already know who you are, but will you tell just a little bit of your story?
Sure.
It's very intriguing to me, and it's a beautiful one. So just start there.
Yeah, I will start. I grew up in Mississippi. I'm a Southern girl, and always in my heart of hearts, I wanted to be a mom, but I had something else. My heart really wanted to be a wild bohemian artist, singer-songwriter, actress also. It got me out of Mississippi. So when I was 20 years old, I catapulted myself into New York City and did wild theater off Broadway, traveled Europe, created a band and performed, and was basically having the time of my life. And guess what? I forgot to be a mother. I got so into my life and my wild nature, but my heart knew on the deepest level. And I also didn't get married because I was just doing my thing. Mm-hmm. And I woke up around 40 and I kind of like looked back and I went, uh-oh, I forgot to do this thing that my heart wants to do. So at 44, as a single mom, I went to China and I adopted my daughter. And it was, all of my head was like, you're too old, you don't have enough money, you're irresponsible, you can't raise a child on your own. But my heart just knew. It just took me. And I always tease people, I laugh. I was like, I got fingerprinted, and I was like, woohoo, fingerprints, police checks, all the things that I never would have done in my life. But my heart was so full that I was going toward my girl.
Yeah.
And so I had this big, huge heart. And I go adopt my daughter, who was 9 months at the time. She was 12 pounds, 10 ounces. And I got to China and I'd done all this work on attachment because I'm a therapist and I knew all this stuff. And my daughter got on my chest and she didn't get off for 12 days. They literally had to hold her up in the shower when I was taking a shower. It was just like this instant. I like to tell people desperation met desperation. And we just went,
so,
right?
So let me stop you there. You were a therapist. So you were a singer-songwriter, you were doing things, but you also had gone to school, obviously. And did you have a practice or what? Tell me.
Yeah, I'll tell you that. Okay. I skipped that part of the story. So I was, in Nashville. I was a singer-songwriter. I moved from New York to Nashville because I was doing kind of country rock music. Okay. And then I became a wardrobe stylist because I was a crazy dresser. So I was in the music business doing styling. And then I met, I looked at a list one day of codependency, and it had 15 traits if you were a codependent, and I had 12 of them. So I went and signed myself up in a codependent treatment. They'd never had anybody come and turn themselves in, but I was like, I'm codependent. Wow. Let me do some work.
How did you Like, I mean, obviously you were hitting some roadblocks to make you even question that.
Yeah, I had been doing a little bit of therapy in New York, so I knew, and my
Okay.
mother was an alcoholic, so I had been around enough. I'm really smart. I love to inquire. So I knew that some of the things that were happening, again, not having relationships, going from one thing to the next. So I started having some hints, and I guess I, saw a codependent book or something.
Okay.
Someone gave
Yeah.
it to me,
I
that
actually
beautiful
read one each
synchronicity.
day. I have Melanie Beattie,
I was going to
a
say
daily
Melanie
one.
Beattie.
It's part of my daily reading.
Yeah, I found Melody, somebody,
Yeah.
but synchronicity, of course,
Mhm.
right? So it
Mhm.
landed in my lap, and I went and signed myself up to clinic in Tennessee.
Okay.
And that was when my journey began, the deepest, deepest inner journey of starting to know more and more about myself. So when I came out of codependency treatment, I met my teachers who were doing a process called a LIA process, and it's a body-centered psychotherapy.
Mhm.
And so I started following them wherever they went just to do the work because it was so yummy to me. I finally, again, my heart found its way.
Mhm.
And they lived in Colorado. I lived in Nashville at the time, but he was from Nashville, my teacher. And they came there to do workshops and they got ready to do a training. And I wasn't planning on being a therapist. I mean, I was still just this wild, crazy girl with every color hair in the rainbow. But I love the work so much. I was like, well, I just want to be with you more.
Yeah.
And so I came out to Colorado to start training. And they're like, well, why don't you come and live with us and help us organize everything? Because you're just like into this all. I was like, okay. So I left my kind of wild bohemian days and I moved out to Colorado to Boulder, and I lived with my teachers and helped them organize the work. It never got really big. It's a
Mhm.
lot like Hakomi, if anybody here knows
Mhm.
Hakomi work.
Mhm.
And yeah, that was when I was 35. I didn't become a therapist till I was like 35 doing their
Okay.
work. It was a
Wow.
non-traditional school.
Yeah.
I studied with them 4 years, but I didn't go to university to become a therapist.
Okay.
Unfortunately, in Colorado, you can work
Okay.
that way.
When you say body work, because that's just basically recognizing our body's response to.
Yeah, it's more body centered,
Uh-huh.
meaning that you find out you're just not up in your head. It's not
Yeah.
just talk therapy.
Right.
You began to go down. We did bioenergetics, breath work.
Yeah.
So we began to work with the body, how the body holds. The body holds all the memory, right?
Yeah.
And so you can work everything out up here, but the body, and that's why parenting is so intense, because the body is what gets triggered, even though you want
Yeah.
to be that conscious, loving,
Yeah.
amazing parent,
Yeah.
the kid just like hits
Yeah.
right into the body.
I I am I am new to that, although I had been seeing my therapist for quite a couple of years, and recently in January I had taken a break in March, called back in January, and she said, "Are you ready to do the body work?" I said, "What do you mean? We hadn't been doing the body work?" It's like, "We need to do the body work." So this is
Yeah.
I'm very new, but very
Yeah.
intrigued. And so, yeah, I'm glad to know that. Yeah, there's definitely a connection with you. I'm
Yeah.
feeling it more and more. Okay, so back to your story.
So I moved out
You,
to Colorado
yes, you're in
and
Colorado, right?
yeah, and I kind of left the bohemian days away and I
Mm-hmm.
started doing deep meditation. And then I hit around 40, and that was when that urge came. And
Yeah.
I recognized I didn't need to really get married. It wasn't that. I didn't need to have a child. My heart wanted to have the experience of being a mother.
Mm-hmm.
And that got so clear. And then it was like, well, of course I can adopt because I just want to experience being a mother. I don't have to go through that whole experience.
Right. Right.
So fortunately, at the time, China was still really open to single moms. So
Yeah.
about a year or two after they kind of closed it
Yeah.
down, you had to go through a lottery.
So you left
But
off in that story where they put her on your chest and she didn't
yes,
want to come off.
no. And
So
as I say,
she was longing for
des-
attachment.
yeah,
Yeah.
desperation met desperation. I mean, it was like we just like fused, right?
Mhm.
And that felt so good to me because I'd never had that in my experience. And I had
Mhm.
read everything on attachment parenting. I was like, this is it. Oh my
Mhm.
God, we're
Mhm.
one. And
Mhm.
it felt really, really good at first because instead of attaching to myself and taking care of my being, I projected everything into my little beautiful, hungry, starving daughter. And I began to try to take care of her. I engulfed her with my idea of what she needed, but it was actually what I needed.
Wow. I think
So,
you just said
yeah,
something really profound.
it's really profound.
Yeah. Let's say it again because I might want to write it down.
Yeah. Well, it's the whole crux to my story about where I got. I mean, it was like I was so hungry and I was so desperate. And so, of course, I go adopt this hungry, desperate baby. And like I say, we kind of fuse. Literally, it felt like that we were fused. Like she would scream bloody murder. They had to take her from my arms a few times for me to do paperwork. She screamed for 20 minutes straight. The woman came back to me. She goes, "Mama's baby." She handed her to me,
Wow.
you know.
Wow.
So we kind of fused. And so everything that I hadn't gotten as a child,
Mhm.
all of my needs and everything, instead of attaching to myself and attending to those, I like made her the location of that. So I projected all of my neediness and everything into her so I could attend to it on the outside.
Yeah.
So we were kind of like one, like I engulfed her. She couldn't even find herself, right? Because she was the manifestation of everything that was in me that I longed to be taken
Mhm.
care of.
Mhm.
And so at first, that just felt fabulous,
Yeah.
for her and for me,
Yeah.
because we were like one. And then what began to happen over time, because I wasn't attending to my attachment with my soul, my being, I had it all in her. She began to express rage. And rage, I tell people, is the great awakener. My daughter was trying to create some separation.
Mm.
It wasn't that she was defiant. It wasn't that she was bad. It wasn't that she was anything. It was like the rage was the power that was trying to create some healthy separation so
Mhm.
she could actually incarnate into her being.
And how old was she when this started to show up?
It really didn't start to show up until she was around 4.
Okay.
So those first years were really like I could just yum, I could just totally
Mhm.
engulf her and
Mhm.
get all my needs met. And then
Mhm.
around 4, it started happening. Like she would, like her behaviors that weren't things that I wanted. We weren't fused. She wasn't going along with me. She wasn't in
Mhm.
the engulfment. And she would like steal my keys or something. It was really weird stuff. And I
Mhm.
had convinced myself that I was the perfect parent. I had this
Mhm.
beautiful daughter, it was all beautiful. And then all this rage started coming up and these weird behaviors. And I didn't recognize that she was trying to healthily get
Separate.
some healthy separation. I saw it as abandonment and rejection,
Hmm.
which triggered my early being, which was why I was trying to make her, I never wanted her to feel rejection and abandonment, but it wasn't her, that was me,
Yeah.
right? So here I am, oh my God, I'd organized my whole life to never feel rejection and abandonment. And what do? I go adopt a child that's been rejected and abandoned. Duh.
Mhm.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
So as she began to healthily separate, it began to activate that intense terror and rejection and abandonment. And then I started acting like a rejected person. And I started sounding just like my mother. And it scared the bejesus out of me
Mhm.
because I swore I was never going to be my mom. I was never going to go, well, just forget it then. I don't love you anyway, or I don't
Mhm.
care.
Mhm. Can I stop you and ask a question?
Please.
I knew you were going to say yes. Um, I have 2 daughters, and I'm kind of thinking I like to read the Facebook groups for adoptive and foster parents, and attachment,
Yeah.
and this is such a, a, a an issue, right, with children
Yeah.
who've been had chaotic, first few years, and
Yeah.
um, it's so funny because it's almost like I have 2 daughters, and I have one that's reminds me of the first 4 years of your daughter's life, and then the other one who I never had that with. And so
Yes.
it's a interesting dynamic, but you know what you're expressing, sometimes they come to us just like that. We don't ever even get to experience uh
Yeah.
that first piece that would
Yeah.
sound so nice to me.
Well, but it's almost health. It's almost, there's health in both.
Okay.
Okay. Because my daughter was willing to give herself up in a way for the attachment. That's what the attachment, she got
Okay.
consumed into us being one. Right. So that wasn't really healthy attachment.
Hmm.
That was what I call engulfment. And it did
Gotcha.
feel good at first
Yeah.
until it didn't, until I wanted her to get off my leg. I wanted her to get away. Her neediness started
Mm-hmm.
just like, ugh. I started getting disgusted by it
Mm-hmm.
because it was really a reflection of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's an unhealthy aspect of that even. And then, as you say, there's also rejection and abandonment are going to come up when you have this big heart and all you want to do is give all this love, right? And this being is not capable yet
Yeah.
to take it,
Yeah.
right? So both of them are unhealthy in a way,
Yeah.
attachment. So what I want to tell you that I found out about attachment is that the attachment work was mine, that I had to be willing to become more of a neutral figure for my daughter instead of trying to attach to her,
Mm.
because then that made her have to be the stable attachment force, which my daughter did for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yours didn't. So there's health in
Mm-hmm.
both ways, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, but it throws us back to one
Mm-hmm.
way or another. You're going to have to experience it
Mm-hmm.
if you
Yeah.
don't have a healthy attachment to your core,
Right. I think
right?
what you're saying is, so often we feel that rejection
Yes.
and one of the podcasts that I was listening to just before we got on was one about feeling like a failure as a mom.
Yes. Yes.
And excellent episode. I think it's episode 17. The audience needs to go, parenting paused, right?
Parenting pause. And
Parenting
they can get it
paused
on my website if they
on
want to
your
listen there.
website. It's also on YouTube. I
Yep.
subscribed, and then on the Apple Podcast. So I've
Yes,
also
it is.
subscribed. They're a lot of them are very short. I'm just
Yes.
a side note here. Really
Yes.
short, quick, amazing insight. And then the one I listened to was an interview with a parent that you had coached, and we'll get in
Yes.
that. But it was, I'd like to
Right.
talk about, like, as we're going through your story, just keeping in mind that sense of feeling like a failure
Yeah.
when you
Well, but
feel the rejection.
the failure is the story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's a story, right? But when you think you're a failure, you feel rejected and abandoned, right? But you think, so the failure is the thinking. I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm a failure. Well, when you think you're a failure, what do you feel? You probably collapse. You feel
Yeah. Can you
rejected
see
because
me?
yeah, right. If you collapse and you feel so rejected and abandoned because you have all this love again, all you want to do
Mm-hmm.
is pour this love, but it's out here. So what I tell parents is you go like this. You have to take all of that love. So my daughter I had to take all of that I was engulfing her with. I had to take it back and engulf myself
Mm-hmm.
with that love and give to myself so that she could get enough breathing room to actually start to grow her own, her own plant.
Yeah.
I want to give you a story because stories always help me.
Please. I love
So
stories.
this is a perfect example of full engulfment.
Okay.
So I'm one that believes in children getting chicken pox. So I live in Boulder, right? And so we went to chicken pox party, right? But before, I was prepared. I'd gotten all the potions and the lotions and I had all the homeopaths. I was just like, oh, come on, chicken pox, I got you, right? And so we go to the party and sure enough, my daughter gets chicken pox and I'm like, yes, right? And I'm putting stuff I'm spraying her every other day and I'm putting stuff in her mouth and we're doing baths. And about day 3, she's miserable and we're in the bed because we co-slept. And she wakes up like, and I get my spray and I'm like, and she knocks it out of my hand. And I'm like, I was so hurt and
Yeah.
wounded. And then all of a sudden I'm laying there in the bed and I went, oh my God, this is her chicken pox experience. It's not mine. This is
Mm-hmm.
hers and she wants to suffer or she needs to suffer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was making it mine. I was going to make
Oh,
sure she had the chicken pox experience that I wanted her to have.
yeah.
And so then when I saw her rage was like literally saying, let me have my experience. But then when I took it personally, because I was doing everything, then I would fall into that feeling of rejection and abandonment.
Mm.
And then I would act out. Then I would turn over and just say, well, just forget it. You just take care of yourself.
Right.
It's crazy, right? So it's either engulfment or total just abandonment.
Yes.
Either one. Now, what I began to find, because I love to dive deep, and this is my work, was that I needed a safe place where I could take myself when those feelings came up and actually engulf myself with my unconditional love, with everything that I was giving her. And so what I created for myself, and now I share with everyone, is something I call the safe seat. And I like to explain it this way. You think about when your little girls, you've got young ones, when they play tag for the first time on the playground, and they're having the best time of their life. They're running around and they're screaming, they're laughing until they're about to get tagged. Then what happens?
I know this very well because I used to teach PE. They start to cry.
They freak out.
Yeah, they freak out.
They'll lay down on the ground and say, I'm sick, or they'll run off the course, I don't want to play, or they'll hit the tagger, or they'll just cry. So what do we create in the game for them?
Base.
Safe base.
Safe base.
Right. So we let them know when they're about to get tagged that they can run over to the safe base, and they go over there because their amygdala, their primal brain's just like going, danger, danger. And they run over there and they grab the tree. And then they just start breathing and breathing. And then they look out and they go, oh, this isn't dangerous. All the fun is out there. And then once they've calmed their nervous system, they run back out and they do that over and over and over again until eventually they want to be the tagger. It's fun, right? So I began to recognize I was getting tagged in my parenting. It was really fun. I loved it. We were doing great until she wouldn't listen to me, or she said no, or whatever. And I would get tagged. I would feel rejected. That was me getting tagged. And instead of hitting the tagger or saying, I just don't want to do this anymore, or crying, or all the reactions I had, I decided to create a safe base, a safe seat that I could run to. And so I started training myself to recognize when I was getting emotionally tagged. And I would literally, it was on my couch. It has to be in the middle of the action. It's not a meditation chair because it's like in the game. I had to stay in the game. I would run myself over to my safe base. And I would sit down, just like holding the tree. And I'd start to breathe. And I would hear this little voice in my side of my ear going, but I just wanted to be this, and I wanted her to love me, and I wanted her to listen, whatever. And I was like, oh, honey. I just started talking to her like, I know you did. That's so hard when you want to give her love and she doesn't take it. So you can see I started talking about to that young part of me that never got the deep attachment inside, never got the love. So I separated out from my daughter. I let her go tag other people, play the game, whatever. And I stayed at the tree long enough, or the safe base, until finally my nervous system would start to calm. And then when I would look back out, I would see my beautiful daughter, because I would be in my adult. And I would see my stressed daughter or my scared daughter. I could see clearly then. And then I could actually show up as the adult that I am to go be with my daughter, which created that attachment, because now I'm neutral. I'm like the tree. I'm the safe base. So now she can feel safe to come. That's the attachment. But you cannot attach to something that needs to attach to you.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Oh, yes. That was very powerful. That was a very powerful illustration. And I've seen your video that you talked about it. That was even better just now. That was good.
Yeah, it's fabulous.
Yeah.
Takes practice.
In that episode that I watched right before this, she talked about recognizing how she needed something from her son. I mean, she needed him. And that's what you're talking about too, right? You need him to be this way, to feel this way about you, to understand.
To be the safe base.
Yes.
Right. And they're not able to. I mean, they've got such a rocky base, they're like, no, 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 no. That's very dangerous when we ask them to receive our love even, right? Because they didn't have a stable attachment. That attachment left, right? And so my daughter, was in survival around the attachment.
Yeah. And I recognize all of these things, in my brain, my cognitive understanding. I know all of these things, but stopping in the moment before
that's the practice. It's not even stopping. That's like in the game, you have to set yourself up like the kids. When you explain to them the game, you say, you're going to have so much fun, you're going to be running around and it's going to be great, and then somebody's going to try to tag you and you get to run over to this tree. You can get tagged if you want, but if you don't want to, you can run over this tree and go safe base. Right? Safe base. And so I had to train myself. I had to tell myself, it's not that I'm trying to stop or pause, because I can't. The energy is going to either go out or it's going to go to the safe base. It's energy. And it's hard to stop a freight train.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you're in your amygdala, your primal brain, it's like a freight train. Like I say, they call them triggers, I think, is because you pull your guns out. And either I'm going to shoot my daughter with my emotional thing, right? Or I'm going to put those guns back in and run over to the safest place I can go. Okay. So you want to think about it instead of I need to stop. It's changing the direction. Okay. So the energy is building. It's coming out. It wants to go and attach to her, which means she's got to be safe. She's got to listen. She's got to whatever. And so what I learned to do, instead of when it was going out, I literally would veer the energy and take it to the safe base. So I didn't, even I used to say you need to pause, and I think I still do, but you really don't. It's hard when the energy is going.
I like that. That helped me a lot, like to think, because that's what I keep saying. I know what to do. I know what to do. I know how to decipher all of these things. I know how to dig in. I know where this message is coming from.
Up here.
But yes, but what you just said is, it's gonna come. It's like you said, it's a freight train. So just veer the track.
Well, we'll take it somewhere safe, because you've already told it. And you literally, if people want to check out my, you start practicing, you start going to 1 out of 10 times I was able to get to the safe base, but I had to let myself know that there was a safe base. I had to establish it.
Yes. Okay. So for listeners, you have 5, I believe there are 5 videos.
Yep. 5 days.
So 5 days, and it's free. So if we go to your website, which is purejoyparenting.com.
Yep. purejoyparenting.com.
And then you just subscribe.
Yep. There's a little box there. It'll say download the 5 days or sign up for the 5-day free days.
Okay. Yes. And I did that. And you have great videos, great explanation, and it gives you 5 days to practice. Yes. Obviously I need to go back and practice.
Well, I'm still practicing 20 years on. So.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you for that reminder that this is just a journey. Yeah.
And it's also a game when you think about it. Sometimes I like to hit the tagger. I mean, I don't mean that physically, but emotionally. And sometimes I like to run off the field and scream. And sometimes I like to lay down on the field and just cry.
A funny story about tag is I used to play this game. I taught PE, elementary PE at my boys' school for a couple of years. It was just 2 days a week. It was fun. Didn't have to, no conferences, no grades. It was just great. But I used to play this game called Dragon Tales. Well, I started teaching pre-K at one point, and I was going to play Dragon Tales. You put a football flag on their back of their thing, and they have to tag it. And then hula hoops are the bases. Well, I realized really fast that pre-K are not ready to be tagged. At all. And so it instantly turned into, oh no, we're not going to tag. Now we're just follow the mama dragon. Here she goes. We turned it into follow the leader.
But that's what you got to do when you're like getting tagged by your daughter. You just got to get your dragon on and
Get
get
my
your dragon to
dragon
take you to the safe seat.
safe seat. And I think I'm gonna run to it.
But we're about pre-K level emotionally.
Mhm.
So I'm really glad you said that. We don't even have the capacity emotionally yet.
Yeah.
That's why in the safe seat, we start to grow ourselves up. We grow the emotional capacity. I can now tolerate feeling rejected and abandoned without acting like a rejected person. And I can
Wow.
actually even enjoy the feeling because it's just energy. So even when it comes now, I can say, oh, I'm just going to take in that energy, not the story, not the identification with I'm rejectable, but it's a very hot energy when you feel rejected or you feel powerless or you feel helpless or you feel rage. So now I've learned I have another process called the sacred seat where I go and then I can just mine that energy. Like I don't want to give it away. I don't want to give it to my daughter or disperse it or do anything with it. It's mine. It's my life force. But we weren't taught that. We were taught it was wrong, it was bad because it acted out, it hit people and it did that. So we were taught that our life force is dangerous and we need to repress it. So now I go to my daughter's door almost every day because she always says no when I ask her to go out to eat. So I can just get some energy.
Gotcha. That's funny. Because how old is your daughter now?
She's 21,
Oh.
but she hates to go out to eat. And I love to go out to eat. I was like, you want to go out to eat today? No,
Mm-hmm.
thank you. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay.
I'm gonna go practice. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just
Wow.
like I get my energy.
Yeah. That's very interesting. So people can download that
Yes.
that
The free safe seat.
yeah, free safe suit. See, but I'm gonna ask a few questions about it.
Sure.
This is what I know about it. It's a space in the middle of things.
Yes.
It's
Mine was on
not
my
the place
couch.
that I really want to go, which is outside on my back porch.
Yeah. That's withdrawing. That would be leaving the game.
Yeah.
Right.
It's in the living room or it's in the kitchen.
In the
It's
game.
in the place.
Yeah.
And so
And
it
mine.
might need to be, what if you are out and about?
So you eventually start to carry it with you. Okay, so it's really important, I feel, at the beginning, because it's an embodiment practice, that you do it at home. You go to your safe seat, or you can just sit on the floor. Like if you're in the park, just sit down on the ground, right? But if you're in the car, which a lot of stuff happens in the car, you're already sitting. So you just ground the energy. You're just like, I'm in my safe seat. You just kind of portable take it with you, right? Wherever you go. But eventually, like I don't actually sit in my safe seat so much anymore, but I have that safe seat inside. As soon as I get triggered, there's a memory that I have some place where I can go. I can feel the energy. I can ground it. And I have a great capacity now to feel a lot more of my life force.
Yeah, I like it.
It's
It's
really
smart.
cool.
Yeah. And then so when you go to the safe seat, you're going to start to notice the sensations that are going on in your body, whether your throat constricts, which is something that happens for me, or my chest tightens, or my shoulders,
Yes.
and
You just
and so
start to
that's the second
notice.
step, right? But go to the safe
Yeah.
seat, then you start to notice.
Yes.
Then
And
you
it
start to
depends for people. For me, I hear myself, like in my left ear, I started hearing the little one in me going, I wanted her to do that. And I didn't want that to happen, just like the little kids in the game would be. I must have been a really vocal kid. I must have gone up the field going, I don't like that, Mommy. I want something to happen different. So I started hearing a little voice and it sounded just like that. So I knew it was really young. And I was like, well, if there's a really young voice like that, well, how would I want to be with it? That was the attachment for me. And what I create now, the sacred seat, which is the deeper seat, is the greater part of me that has no judgment. I can bring anything to my safe seat. My favorite time to safe seat is after I've acted out. Because instead of going to guilt and shame, I go to the safe seat and I hear her. I say, what happened, honey? She goes, well, I'm like, oh, sweetheart, you didn't want to scream at your daughter. You just didn't remember that you could come here and love yourself. Right. So I always come back. I don't feel guilt or shame anymore. Right. Because it's like a refusal to come into intimacy with, I just got flooded. I got overwhelmed, just like children do. They get flooded with all these feelings and then they just act out.
What you're talking about is practicing self-compassion.
And it's all always there. I mean, we all have a sacred self. We all have an unconditional self. We just begin to identify because of our upbringing. I tell people it's like our parents were God. I mean, anybody that feeds
Sure.
you and houses you, they're your God. I mean, you
Right.
have to put all your power into them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they were limited human beings, just like we
Mm-hmm.
all are. But as children, we don't know that. So we can't see that they're limited. We make ourselves limited. We
Right.
think there's something wrong with me if I
Right.
can't get that love that I need, right?
For sure.
So when we try to go back to that sacred self or that unconditional self is just who we are, sometimes we'll run into our parent inside,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we have to kind of move that energy all the way back to remember. That's why I make it a seat that it is my representation of the unconditional part of me that never went anywhere. In the game, I just decided or played, this beautiful personality called Leslie.
Mm-hmm.
And I have all these strategies and I learned all this stuff. And,
Mm-hmm.
and now the game, now that I'm older, is just to come back and go, oh, I'm the one that's creating the game. My daughter is not causing my problems. She can't fix them or even my feelings, but I can.
Mm-hmm.
I can bring them to a safe place that I know I had. That's the attachment. I know
Mm-hmm.
that safe place lives inside of me now.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of
And
trying to attach to my daughter, I come back and I hand it all to my unconditional self in my safe seat.
yeah, I read a book years ago in my first round of parenting called Mothering Yourself, Mothering Your Child, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on this track a long time, and it can
Yeah.
be frustrating to feel like, um, to feel like
Yeah.
you take 10 steps forward, and then all of a sudden you're back 20. It feels like
Well,
that.
think about it this way. Okay. So every one of your children came and opened a certain door for you.
Mm,
Okay. Because you've got this big castle and you hid the treasure away deep inside, right? Because that's what we need to do as children. We hide who we are. And so we subordinate ourselves. We do all kinds of things to fit in the family. So each one of your children came and opened a certain door, right? Toward the
mhm,
treasure. So your daughter now, these daughters, and especially the one that's triggering you the most, is opening a really, really tender door. It wasn't like you didn't have it. It was just so secret. It was so hidden away because it's so close to the core treasure of you, right?
yeah,
So that's why she's here. It's not like the other doors weren't open. You've done all this amazing work, but she got through the burglar alarms
yeah,
and she's really close to the jewel.
yeah. I've always known she was my
Yeah.
gift.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's what mine was. People always said to me, what a noble act of humanity
yeah,
that I adopted her. I said, yes, on her part,
yeah,
because she came back for me. That's how
yeah.
I feel.
Wow. Yeah.
She came
Wow.
back to open this door that no man could open or no
Hmm.
relationship could open. It's like my daughter has, she's very fierce, my daughter, very intense. And she can blow through
Mm-hmm.
that door of protection,
Mm-hmm.
around my jewel because she's the jewel and she's shown me mine.
Wow. You are a great gift.
Oh, honey.
You are. You
Thank
really,
you.
you really,
Mm,
you've really touched me this last few
mm,
days and listening
I'm
to
so
you.
glad.
And
Yeah.
I feel like you can see me and
Mm,
hear me and
mm,
understand me.
yeah.
It's very powerful. And so you're doing great work. Tell us, there's one other thing I heard through one of the episodes I listened to, that you do some, and this is actually something I told my husband earlier this week that I need to make as part of my additional self-care
Mm,
plan, if you will, because
yes.
honestly, I'm kind of going back and looking and realizing how crazy and how limited of time and space I've had for me over this past
Mm-hmm.
year. And I am not
Mm,
alone. I mean, we have had, the
yeah.
COVID thing, like
Yeah.
just enormous amounts of chaos and
Yeah.
crazy and very limited, vacations out the window. School
Yeah.
for a huge chunk has been out the window. My kids only go 3 days anyway. So, wow. I think we've averaged 7 days a month for the past year, um, maybe less than that when we were completely out. But
Yeah.
I guess where I'm going is I had told him, I said, I'm feeling some compassion fatigue, is one term that I hear it called, and just really, really starting to, this resentful, feelings are just starting to come up. So I got to create a plan. And one of the
Yeah.
things was, I'm getting to it, is you is a group, a support group. And I heard that you have, and this, maybe that you don't do this anymore, I don't know, but you have
Yeah.
care groups.
Yes, they're wonderful.
Tell us about those, because that sounds like
They're
angels singing.
they're fabulous. We were just even talking in a care group today. We were talking about that exact thing. We need a place to where we can recharge and we can be seen and we can be heard and we can
Mm-hmm.
share, but not be, in my groups, we don't, go into the hole. Like we really see each other. Like I'm
Yeah.
seeing you. It's like, oh no, honey, you're not a failure. You haven't gone backwards. You just brought a child to you that's really opening the door right to your heart,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yay, good for
Yeah.
you.
Yay.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
So my care groups, they're usually 6 to 8 parents. I keep them very small. So every week you get to work and you get really intimate with your group. It's like, everybody, but
Mm-hmm.
every week you get time, if you want to
Mm-hmm.
share, to
Mm-hmm.
talk about what goes on. And yeah, we meet the first 3 times in the month. Like if it's on a Tuesday, we meet the first 3 Tuesdays. I take the fourth week off for me to
Mm-hmm.
create and to nurture
Mm-hmm.
myself because I give
Mm-hmm.
a lot, which I
Yeah.
love to do.
Yeah. Well,
But
I will be signing up.
they're my favorite offering. They really
Really.
are. They're so sweet. And right
Uh-huh.
now, anybody that's in my care groups, we're doing a 30-day sacred seat process that I just created. It just
Okay.
started this week.
Okay.
And that's a really beautiful. My people ask me, they're like, can we hold us more accountable? Can you do something
Yeah.
for us? So I
Yeah.
created this beautiful 30-day
Yeah.
sacred seat, which
That
is a
sounds
whole
like
nother
a
level.
godsend right now. I'm gonna
It's
definitely,
yummy.
so we can go to the website and
Mhm.
there's a place for that as well.
Yes, if you just go under offerings, you'll see all my offerings and the
Okay.
care groups are there.
Okay.
So, but
And so you do, let's just go through, let's
yeah.
wrap this up with going through your offerings, because what a great,
Woo! Well,
how joyful.
yes,
I,
right?
I I love
Well,
this word.
I
My
always tell
daughter's name is
people,
Joy. Middle name's Joy, because she was such a joy that we.
yes. Well, I always tell people just come and play with me. So that's why I do offerings. I try to give people
Okay.
different ways to come in and play.
Okay.
So I do one-on-ones,
Okay.
and then I do the care groups. That's my favorite offering that I
Mhm.
do. And then I have 3 different courses that are like the parenting pause, a 30-day road trip. And I don't know if you can cuss on here, but it's called FUCK, your
Okay.
family legacy. You
Gotcha.
might want to be good for your
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's
audience.
great. Yeah. I gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, I
so
can understand where that would go. That's important.
yes,
Yeah.
and I wanted to make a statement like, okay,
Yes.
let's do
Yeah.
this to wake up to
Yeah.
look at our
Yeah.
family legacy.
Mm-hmm.
So those are my main offerings. And then I have Pure
Okay.
Joy Walk Talks, which are every day you get like little 5-minute inspirational talks during the week. So that one's
Okay.
kind of a low end offer for people
Yeah.
that can kind of enter and just see, you get me in your ear for five
Yeah.
minutes every day. I take a topic each week and I just deepen it by
Yeah.
Friday, and you
Yeah.
just go on the
And then
journey
there's
with
the
me.
parenting pause how often do you put those out?
It just depends. I have a wait list. I just ask people to get on the wait list, and then if I have enough people, I'll throw that out. I do a Pure Joy Parent Coach training right now, so
Okay.
I'm kind of in a 7-month training because
Okay.
that kind of came because people were like, "Teach us how to do this."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're doing great work, and
Thank you.
I'm very honored to have spent
Oh,
this time with you, and
thank you.
thank you. And
Well,
I will put all of that stuff, all of those things we talked
great,
about, in the show notes so
great.
they can click
I
and,
will also send you a link for the show notes where people could get
okay.
a free gift, and
Okay.
they'll get the 5-day. And also, you get a PDF on what a healthy boundary looks like
Hmm.
versus binding your child.
Okay.
And then also, they can have a free week of my walk talks just to try
Okay.
them out.
Great.
So
Yeah.
I'll
So
send you
you're going
that
to,
link.
yeah, that's great. So then I won't even have to go back and write all this down. You're going to
You
send
can
it to
just
me.
put that
Perfect.
in the show notes, and then people can
Perfect.
have that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I have a feeling our paths are going to connect again. And I got an
So
email. It sounds like I got an email today, I think, from you saying that maybe it was the conference that I first heard you on is going to be rebroadcast.
yes, the Beyond the Behavior.
Beyond
Yes.
behavior. Is that what it's called?
Yes. Beyond
Okay.
the Behavior. Yes,
Beyond the behavior. Okay.
I'm gonna be in that in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so they can find that on your website as well.
Yeah. But I would love to leave one last thing with
Yes,
you,
please.
especially and everybody else,
Mm-hmm.
right? I would love for you as an experiment, close your eyes for a moment.
Okay.
And I want you to feel the energy of the story that I'm a failure. Right. And as you tell yourself that story, I want you just to feel the energy in your body, just to notice where you notice it in your body. And I want you in this moment just to take off that I'm a failure. And I just want you to see it as your life force, as your energy. It gets stuck. It's stressful when you name it as I'm a failure, but it's just energy. It has a lot of energy in it. Can you feel the energy in it?
Yeah, it's in
Yeah,
my
it's like,
throat.
yeah, so just right there, it's like swirling, just like, whoa, that's my life force that got stuck in a story that said I'm a failure, right? So in this moment, I'm going to ask you to take that energy and imagine that you can even do it with your hands, pulling it down all the way into your body instead of trying to get rid of it. Pull that energy down to charge your emotional battery all the way down into your, I call them your loins, whatever you want to call them, just all the way down into the root chakra. And as you activate this root chakra, you're going to imagine that you're sending the energy to your daughter from there to really work with that survival energy that's active in her. So you're going to tell her it's safe to bring all that intense energy. It's okay to bring it all the way down instead of acting it out as a protector. But you're going to show her how with your energy right now. You're just going to bring it all the way down into the root. And you're going to let it just fill up your emotional battery. And I like to take mine even further. I take it in like roots in the ground. I just send that energy all the way down into the earth. And I imagine that I'm I'm connecting to the earth. And then one last piece as you do that, I want you to see if you're willing in this moment to release your daughter from carrying your fear or your failure. Just release her. Say, I'm going to take that back. Yeah, because I'm strong enough now. I can work with that. It's mine. It's my life force. So I'm going to release you from carrying my sense of failure. Yeah. And you can fly and be whoever you are and dance and be your own being. So I'm just going to release you and I'm going to take that back because it's my life force. And I'm going to love it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, audience, for listening and for just staying. And you know what? This was so interesting. And so I bet they stayed the whole time, right till the very end. Maybe they're all feeling that energy grounded in that root chakra right now. Yes.
Let's do it, mamas.
Yes, let's do it, mamas. Let's join is it care group?
Yes.
I want to join a care group. I'm excited.
Okay.
So
well, just come on over to Pure Joy.
I am. And so thank you for listening. Don't forget, share this yes, with others. Please. This community is, we get each other and we need each other. And so share. Thanks again for joining us and we will see you next week. Mama's Way.